You guys have been loving these, so let's jump right into my top 5 Fortress faction heroes and idol heroes for 2021. Coming in at number 5, Sigmund. Sigmund is such an early game powerhouse, and he's the only hero, at least that I can think of, that combines the PvE combination of armor break and burn. Between his active reducing the enemy's armor, as well as his, I believe, his basic attack, and both of them doing burn, Sigmund is such a huge upgrade for really any level of PvP. Really any level of PvE, at least until you start dealing with Drakes and Ithaqas and stuff like that. Sigmund is really powerful for a 5 and 6 star, especially early game. When you're doing weird early game PvP, he will also be able to really take a lot of the early opponents just because of his sheer tankiness and attack stat. Obviously, he falls off really hard in really the mid game, let alone the late to end game. That said, a fun fact is Sigmund can actually solo Aspen Dungeon Death 1 for you with some decent RNG. That said, he is absolutely awful at Fortress Sealand solo. At E5, you're really going to struggle to clear like Sealand 12, even with some solid support. So that's the reason he's really nowhere to be found on first E5 tier lists. But until you've got a Drake and a Death Swarm combination, or until you're really pushing the mid to late game, Sigmund is really required for PvE and not the worst PvP hero you can have. Coming in at number 4 on the list, the cannon girl herself, Penny. Penny's not the best at anything in the game, really, but she's just a really well-rounded hero that can make early game super easy and really stay at least through the mid game. Once you start to get 5, 6 E5 heroes, you'll really consider replacing your Penny, but until then, she can be honestly an absolute monster. She even works as a sort of burn hero for PvE if you don't have your Sigmund or Deathsworn yet. She isn't terrible. I've done some broken space boost comps with Penny, and she can get it done in under 150 tickets, but it's not clean and it's not easy. So if you are running a Penny as your first E5, it is going to be a little bit of struggle to get that first broken spaces 7 clear. That said, a solo Penny can clear Fortress Sealand 20 fairly easily, either V3 with no support or just E5 with some decent support in the form of Emily's and whatnot. She honestly has probably the second or third easiest Aspen Dungeon Death 1 clear for any early game E5. The nice thing about Penny is, especially compared to a lot of the other first E5s, is there's no wave she can't beat with 1 or 2 DPs until that point, just because the way her active works. If she doesn't crit, obviously she'll lose, and if you want to see Penny not critting, I suggest you check out Barry's vids. His Pennies seem to crit a lot less than mine do. Other than that, pretty all-around decent PvP hero. Between her dynamite armor sort of helping her with control effects and reflection armor doing some extra damage, and a decent active that with 29,000 base attack hits pretty hard when it does crit. She's all around just a not bad hero, and still definitely one of my highly recommended first E5 heroes, but really a hero you're going to replace at one point in the game. Really once you get your 4th, 5th, 6th E5 hero, generally speaking. Third up on this list, and some of you are going to be surprised by how low he is everyone's favorite magician, Sherlock. Sherlock, not the best PvE hero, obviously. He's great for those Aspen Dungeon Death 100 pushes. Slap a Splendid Rui on him, and he'll turn some RNG into waves you shouldn't have beat. And he can either solo, duo, or support for a Fortress Sealand 20 clear. Although solo Sherlock is a harder clear, it's going to take V3 and some solid RNG. But if you bring a 10 star or up to E5 support Sherlock with your Penny or some other solo E5 heroes, he'll make the clear much easier with his tanking and HP swaps. Now, while he's not the best PvE hero, Sherlock is an absolute monster in PvP, and he's honestly still at least a part of the late to end game meta since he's been released. You all know what he does at this point. His active turns, 2 enemies into doves. His basic turns 1 enemy into doves. He has cards that allow him to swap HP with the opponent, transfer control effects, and so on. He's just so tanky and has such good CC that honestly, unless the meta returns to some hyper speed meta that can completely shred through a Sherlock, I don't see him leaving anytime soon. And honestly, I mean, I wouldn't build him super early, since obviously he's not great in anything outside of Aspen. But once you get a Sherlock, you can absolutely stomp mid-game PvP for those of you that do care about that. Because one E5 Sherlock against, you know, a team that only has 1 or 2 E5 heroes, he's going to be able to lock them down completely. And honestly, it's a ton of fun to watch. Another downside to him is he tends to shine with a splendid A and B, which isn't the best anymore due to just the amount of Transcendence heroes doing so much damage. A splendid Rui, which may be harder to get on him, or you try and build him tanky with a splendid Crown or splendid MSS. But if you noticed, there's a lot of splendids in there, and some of those artifacts you don't really want that much. Number 2 on the list, and one of my favorite new heroes, the Hammer Girl herself, Fiona. Fiona is such an incredible priest and brought so much to the game. I'm a little disappointed my double Fiona team wasn't as OP as I thought it would be, but she's honestly still a staple in PvP, PvE, really anywhere you want to bring her. Her actives does some pretty decent damage, generally speaking, and, you know, give shields to your team. Shields are great because they're additional DR above your HP as opposed to a heal where if you receive an Ignis heal when you're at 100% HP, doesn't help you. Her basic attack is going to give you guys more shields, and it does some control removal for her allies, which is great. And yeah, her redemption skill doing healing is just a nice bonus on top of everything else. If you've seen my priest only Broken Spaces 1 through 7 run, you'll see that Fiona does an absolute ton of damage for a priest, honestly, compared to some non-priest heroes. I personally bring my at least one Fiona with me for my Realms Gate teams. She's such a great support at helping keeping that Tix alive. When it comes to PvE like Arc Bosses and Flame Shrine and Broken Spaces, she's not the best in most 6-hero lineups, but if you have a Fiona, she's easy plug and play. And yeah, she's just an all-around great support hero for honestly every game mode. Even there's a few Aspen dungeon waves in Death where she can do just fine. I mean, she'll clear it without using any energy, which is all you can ask for one of your sort of secondary support heroes in Aspen Dungeon. Personally, I love Fiona. I can't talk highly enough about her. Her stats are insane, and yeah, she's a great support hero. I just wish double Fiona was a little more OP. Last but not least, and it should be pretty obvious by this point, the samurai himself, Inosuke. Inosuke is such an interesting hero, and honestly, my favorite part about Inosuke is the fact that he brought some really interesting and unique strategies to quite a few different game modes. There haven't really been any cheese teams that incorporated non-max level heroes outside of really mim cheese teams for a while. There's been some stuff with 5-star carries in Trial of Champions, or some carry stuff with Asmodel the Dauntless, but generally speaking, an E5 carry does better on those teams than the 5-star carry does anyway, unless you're trying to trick people with your low power. But Inosuke is one of the few heroes where a 6-star Inosuke is better than a 10-star Inosuke, is better than an E5 Inosuke at what he's trying to do. Inosuke's basic attack and his active put shields on him. Those shields block enemy damage, protecting his own HP. You slap a splendid, radiant, or sometimes even glittery magic stone sword on Inosuke, caps the max damage he can receive. So you cap the max incoming damage, that hits his shield. His base hit points are never touched, and then he gets to stack more and more shields on top of each other. It's super fun to watch. Check out any of my or someone else's Realms Gate video if you want to see it in action. And yeah, it's just an awesome thing to watch. Other than that, Inosuke has one of the 2 easiest Seal Land 20 clears, with being able to do it all the way at E3 if you have enough support and artifacts. Even if you don't, an E5 Inosuke Seal Land 20 clear is pretty easy once you have tech and whatnot in place. He's decent in Aspen Dungeon Death. I expected him to be a little better, but the way enemy scaling works and the enemies that are already difficult in Aspen Dungeon, like occasionally Asmos, Amon-Ra's, Pennies, Quad Oberons and so on, are also hard for Inosuke, so it's not like things are any easier for him. That said, he can function as a poor man's Ada, at the very least in Aspen Dungeon. I used him in my free-to-play Death 100 clear to some pretty solid success. Inosuke Cheese is also, I mean, it's the best way to push your Void Corruption level. It's also arguably the easiest way to clear Void Vortex Defier, which I hope to have a guide for soon. I mean, I know there's guides out there, but you guys want to come to my channel sometime, so I'll try and get that clear recorded as well. And yeah, also Inosuke at E5 is incredibly underrated. The free-to-play account built him as the 3rd or 4th E5 hero. He honestly does an absolute ton of damage. He's my top damage dealer in Flame Shrine and Broken Spaces, and it's the reason I can clear in under 150 tickets. And he also isn't bad at PvP at all. Obviously, he falters to carry because his active is his main form of damage reduction. That said, you're not running into a ton of carries in the mid game, and if you can kill them before they start draining Inosuke, he really will be able to steamroll over the rest of their team just by stacking shields and never dying. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you disagree with any of my rankings. But just to wrap it up and remind everyone, my top 5 Fortress faction heroes in order are number 5, Sigmund, number 4, Penny, number 3, Sherlock, number 2, Fiona, and number 1, Inosuke. Again, let me know if you agree or disagree with any of these, and tune in next time when I do the Abyss faction rankings. For more of my beginner guides and tutorials, you can check out this playlist in the top left corner. If you want to watch my Orange Artifact free-to-play tier list, check out this video up here in the top right corner. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons if I've provided you with any value, and help me grow this channel.